now.
Yes, thank you so much. In the interest of time, I'm going to quickly move into the paper presentations. Thank you so much, presenters, for waiting. And thank you so much, Sandeep sir, over the permission put on DM to kind of go over time for this fantastic discussion. I'm just kind of trying to multitask here. So, welcome to the paper presentation section of our AoIR satellite event. We have 4 papers for you today in this order. Channel Shift, Negotiating Hunger in the Online Mode in Delhi by Farhad Salim, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Technological Platforms and Institutional Collaborations in Higher Education. A study of micro-credential programs in India by Himani Sharma, Micah. Himani, if you could please come on video. I'm spotlighting you. Yes. Yes. Then we have social media engagement in the new normal, an exploratory study on Facebook users by Madhumita Das, IGNOU. Madhumita, are you here? Could you please turn on your video? I'm spotlighting.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
And zooming past the new normal, understanding students' engagement with online learning in higher education during the COVID-19 pandemic by Suraj Nambudri Maika. So we have the very cool Dr. Sandeep Kumar, who will be the discussant for these papers. Dr. Sandeep Kumar is Associate Professor, Department of Communication and Director, International Studies at Denison University. His work focuses on the global dimensions of digital culture, post-colonial theory, cultural globalization, and critical theory. He's widely published, with most recent work being the book, The Digital Frontier, Infrastructures of Control on the Global Web, which unpacks the operation of global cultural power on the internet. I'll be sharing a link to his book in chat for you soon. Thank you so much for being here with us, Sandeep sir. Would you like to take a minute to introduce?
No, I just want to thank you, Davina, and thank you, Usha, Nimi, and all the organizers of this great event. I'm not sure about the cool acronym, but I do think I've learned a lot just attending, all the speakers today. So no, just thank you. And I've read the abstracts, and I look forward to the presentations and sharing thoughts. And I hope also there will be a good conversation, and there will be questions and thoughts at the end of the presentation. So yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. So in the order mentioned earlier on, we'll have Farhad, Himani, Madhumita, and Suraj speaking for 8 minutes each. I'm sorry, I'm cutting down on time for you all. And I'll be messaging you directly here on Zoom when you have to wrap up. So please do, or I'll have to interrupt you, and I don't want to do that. This will be followed by Sandeep sir's remarks and questions to each presenter. And we'll end the session, hopefully if we have time, by throwing open the floor to audience for questions and comments, again moderated by Sandeep sir, with my PhD colleague Chanar in chat spot. This means that you can put your questions in chat for us with your name, affiliation, who your question is addressed to, and your brief question or comment. So over to you, Farhad. Do you have a presentation? Do you want to share your screen? Tell us.
Thank you, Devina. Can you please share the screen, or should I put my
slide? You're gonna have to. Yeah, you're gonna have to present. Let me just give you the privileges. Yes, you can share now.
Is it visible to all of you?
Yes, but could you just go to presenter mode?
Sure. It's very.
Bottom right. Oh, all right, that will do.
Actually, this hides.
Yes, right.
Is it clear now to all of you?
It's fine. We can go with this.
Oh.
Perfect.
Thank you everyone for giving me a chance to present our work. So basically, this paper is about channel shift, negotiating hunger and the online mode in Delhi. It's basically a project we are running from last 3 years. That's called Janka. It's a collaborative project between IIIT Delhi and Goldsmith University of London. So we have colleagues Asim Khan from Goldsmith, Dr. Ratan Suri from Goldsmith, Martin Beff from Asim Khan and Ratan Suri from IIIT, and Martin Beff from Goldsmith. So what work which I'm going to present here is from our phase 1 and phase 2 study of how digital things are happening in Delhi in a segregated pocket called Tilokpuri, which is in East Delhi. So this project, which we call it Jankar, and why we name it Jankar is like that we call someone Jankar who has a knowledge of similar things. And if we look at how digital things are working on, so if a person knows anything in a community, people call, I mean, we call it a Jankar, people going to that person for mediation or for any other things related to digitally. So this our project is basically funded from Global Research Fund, Global Challenges Research Fund, and it's a 2-phase study. And this is our team. We were working with a 8-woman team along with a civil society organization called JOES, which is in East Delhi. And these are colleagues. So if we look at Tilokpuri, so it's in basically a East Delhi, which is near to UP border of Delhi. Those who are from Delhi, they must be known as. And this pocket is an economically very low pocket and working class mostly living here. So my main argument, what we are going to talk about in this presentation is like about that how technological and infrastructure shift to digital protection schemes, how these lead to marginalization, and especially in a time like COVID when things are totally rapidly digitalizing and each and everything is connected with digital things. Then in spaces like Tilokpuri, which are already excluded from the main city because these are located at the end of the periphery of the cities, and these are not that connected with cities, how they face it. And meanwhile, when things are so much into digital things, everything is connected, how people from their own community, how if we look at these 8 women which we were working with and other volunteers also, how these people try to come out in the first surge of COVID lockdown, which was on 24th of March 2020. And when there was a certain complete lockdown, not exactly like a second wave lockdown, but a first wave lockdown was completely lockdown. Nobody was allowed to go anywhere. Nobody knows what to do. At that time, the main crisis was come for the hunger, because like Tilokpuri is a pocket where lots of labor classes living there, people who are from low income strata, they are living there. And then there was a main question of hunger because everything was closed. Those who are basically dependent on these day-to-day rations of they were closed, everything was closed. At that moment of time, our digital volunteers, they try to help people with different things, and we will talk about it. Like when this whole thing's happening, when there was a lockdown and then nobody was allowed, our volunteers, and we call it Jankas, they were on field. They were on field with digital things. They were connecting people through their groups, which they made on WhatsApp to know about the ration need of individual families. They were getting the call from, messages on their WhatsApp from different pockets, because Tilokpuri is like a 36 pocket space there. And then they were getting number of messages that we need ration, we need this and that. And these people were trying to meditate with MLAs, with AAP councillors. AAP is because both of them are from Aam Aadmi Party, MLA and the council. They were trying to engage with them and trying to fix things for them. But if we look at this thing, because at the time of second wave lockdown, when everything was so closed and then nobody was knew what to do, Delhi government they introduced this system called e-coupons, and they introduced it with the phase that it will help people to get ration. Those who are not those who are not a resident of Delhi, those who are like a migrated labor here in Delhi, they are here for their daily wage things, and they can get their ration. But for this thing, they launched this thing e-coupon thing, which is basically a simple thing that one has to go to a website and then they have to type their Aadhaar details and all things, and then they will receive one SMS that they have to go on a certain date at a certain government school, and they will get a ration from that. But the main issue with this system, if we look at it, in a pocket like Tilokpuri, which is so segregated, which is so economically unequal as compared to other districts of Delhi. Therefore, totally, I mean, nobody knows what to do there, because first of all, when they introduced this whole system of taking ration through e-coupons, nobody knows what to do, because half of them Aadhaar details were not with them. They need Aadhaar detail with the mobile phone number linked with it. And second, it's not at all possible for a person to do certain things when they don't even know how to run an Android phone, because it's nowadays everybody knows that it's, I mean, majority of people is using Android phone. They are listening, I mean, music on YouTube. They are talking on WhatsApp messages, but using a website, go to a certain URL, giving them details, it's really, I mean, it's a difficult task for them, or especially for a people who are not that literate in the digital things. At that moment of time, our advocacy group they come into main thing. They try to meditate with these people. They try to help them. They try to engage with these people, and then basically these people that going to home and home, they were taking their numbers there and allowing them to take rations from them. But if we look at infrastructurally divide between these areas where, I mean, Tilupuri is situated, and then the digital things which were not linked up so closely with it, it was a totally a task for them, because nobody knows what to do. And out of this, when government was trying to do everything online, we all know that how, I mean, this current, if we look at our government, the way they are doing it there, it's always an app for everything. It's like ration shortage, there was an app for it. If like a bed shortage for COVID thing, there was an app for it. But who knows how to run on app? I mean, when there is so much of inequality in certain areas, when nobody knows how to operate them, it's really a chance for them. At that time, our mediators came into power, because these people, they know how to make things run, because they are the community mobilizers. They allow us to use their phones, they engage with them, they take their details on their WhatsApp, then they file their this thing e-coupons through their phones. But this is not I mean, that's not a thing to do in a certain, when there was a first peak COVID lockdown, when everything was shut down. So my main argument on this, and in this whole thing is this: if we look at that, social networks and infrastructure are essential to the functioning of initiatives like, I mean, volunteers network. What they were doing, they were distributing roti bank, and they were giving food packages for them. And demand for welfare is embedded in local neighborhood through neighborhood digital as well as analog infrastructure, including religious and community spaces. Like they were using different community spaces. They were using masjid loudspeaker to announce that ration will be distributed at a certain time. But people know that ration is going to be distributed at a certain time, but they don't know how to use it, how to accept it, because that was totally dependent on the online mode. And if we, closely look at from our phase 1 and phase 2 study, we are very much clear that if government even is going to implement digital things with such rapid speed, we need mediators, we need community mobilizers, we need people those who are trained in this to mediate with community and digital things together. You cannot impose a simple blanket on a community and then expect them to run, as per their standard, run as a way that everybody can access digital things. So that's the thing. Thank you. I think I may be, is it 8 minutes or still a?
No, you made it. Good. Himani, do you want to quickly share if you have a PowerPoint?
Yes. So could you please give me the sharing rights?
Yes, you do them. You do have them.
So good evening, everyone. This is Himani, and I'm an FM scholar from IIIT-Hyderabad, and currently I'm pursuing my thesis on the topic of EdTech adoption in higher education, and that's where the idea behind the study that I'm going to discuss actually emerged from. So as it is titled, Technological Platforms and Institutional Collaborations in Higher Education, it is a study of micro-credential programs in India, where my co-author, Professor Santosh K. Patra, is working with me, and I will be presenting it today. So before going ahead with what we had in mind for taking this, I would just like to discuss about how this whole concept of micro-credentials has become a powerful concept, not only just in the industry today, but also in the world of academia. So definitely there are certain factors which led to the rationale also of our study. One being digitization, that how changes have occurred and how rapidly technological changes are galvanizing the system, influencing the classroom teaching and learning. And that is why it is one of the core reasons why we are taking a turn towards the other alternatives for teaching and learning. The second reason, which is highlighted and which is also supported by the literature, is the lack of portability of transcripts. So as we are aware that the traditional universities have a system of awarding the students and evaluating them with the help of transcripts which are given to them. However, these transcripts at times are not portable and are not stackable. So that is one reason why micro-credentials are also gaining a momentum in the industry and academia. The third reason that we are trying to highlight is the lack of change. So despite a lot of hue and cry around the current education policy which is proposed and which yet needs to be strongly implemented with the kind of promises being made, there is a lack of change that is continuously being witnessed in the traditional universities in India, and that as a result of which the mindset, the philosophy around how are you going to value education, the value of education is going to be assessed, also needs a certain level of change. So that's another reason. The next reason that we are talking about is the lack of evidence. So all of us, while we were pursuing our degrees, while we were pursuing our programs, had our transcripts in hand, but those transcripts do not guarantee certain skills which are required in the job market, or certain skills which keep us alive in the job market. As we say, they stop us from becoming obsolete. So that evidence which is needed, that kind of upgrading, reskilling, the words that have emerged again and again, is one thing which seems to be oriented coming to us from the help from these micro-credential programs. And of course, one major reason behind the whole idea was the pandemic, which not only infused us to a lot of changes and shifts, but also made us think that how there could be alternative paths, there could be alternative avenues through which higher education could be strengthened, and even the quality of education and the quality of skills that are being imparted to the students could be enhanced through it. So this set up the whole rationale, the objective behind this study. And that's how we came to the term, exploring the term of micro-credentials, the phenomena in the context of higher education. So taking a definition by Rosier and Tan, which was given in 2019, they define micro-credentials as programs that represent from 1 to 100 hours of learning, and it may or may not be an accreditation to any other university, either online or face-to-face. In the context of this study, we take the definition of micro-credentials as their certification of assessment of online programs of the learning that the learners have acquired which they are intended to provide to the learners with knowledge, skills, and values. And specifically for this study, we opted for a qualitative work to explore what the stakeholders think about the whole phenomena of micro-credentials. What is their understanding of the role of micro-credential in higher education? What is the level of willingness that they have? What is the kind of awareness that they have? And through this study, we try to holistically approach the different stakeholders, like the policymakers, the educators, the research communities, and even the students, to understand why this phenomena may be an important avenue for higher education to grow in the future. So the two main objectives of the study that we try to explore through it is one is exploring the adoption and role of micro-credential in higher education institutions in India specifically. So why India was our site of the study is because India is one of the promising site which is catering to a large education technology platforms, and a lot of unicorns have originated in India. Other reason being that India is one of the countries which contributes maximum in terms of learner enrollment in these programs and higher education courses. And the second objective of the study is to propose a comprehensive framework which integrates the perspective of these different stakeholders whom we are interviewing for the study, who represent universities. So there are students, there are faculty members who are a part of the government bodies as in who represent AICT, UGC, and HRD, and the EdTech industry representatives who are directly involved in designing these programs, collaborating with higher education institutions, and at the same time also delivering the content to the students. So that is how the study is designed. So like I mentioned, it's an exploratory work where we take critical theory of technology and technology adoption model as the basis. Why did we take critical theory of technology? The core reason was the theory clearly states that technology is rational and biased. And we do accept that in our study, that how it is directed for a particular outcome. So similarly, we have tried to explore that in our study. And at the same time, the theory also questions the education system. So that gives us the leverage of exploring the critical side as well, where the capitalist role of these edtech companies come into picture, and the promising role of the government, the state comes into picture, where whether they are delivering the promises made or not. Then it's a qualitative study. So this is a work in progress study where we have been able to do a partial set of interviews with certain students who have enrolled for various online programs in higher education. The universities selected was specifically those which offer online programs in collaboration with various edtech companies which have originated in India. And similarly, the edtech companies were selected were those which offer online programs in collaboration with universities offering any kind of programs. And then we are also trying to approach individuals from educational boards in India, which is a challenge for us right now because we are still in talks with them and we are still trying to get their time for the study. So that's how it is a work in progress. And right now we are following a theoretical sampling process where the participants themselves are guiding the course of the study ahead. And like I mentioned, the site of the study is India for now. And so by far, the partial findings of our study, the interim findings of the study indicates certain prominent points. So one being that majority of the stakeholders are very optimistic about micro-credentials, and they do acknowledge and realize that yes, micro-credentials could play a very significant role in expanding the reach of higher education, and at the same time, it could be the new revenue model for higher education institutions in India. The second thing is there is a kind of an acceptance for micro-credentials as a means for lifelong learning and also for professional development. And the third thing is where we are talking about the role of the different helices, that is the academia, university, and edtech industry and government. The fourth helices which is emerging is citizenry, where time and again the participants have quoted the role of self-responsibility for professional development. So that is how, by far, what we have done in terms of the study. We are still exploring and we are still collecting the data for it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Himani. I'm so glad that speakers see me and realize that they are supposed to be done now. Okay, next we have Madhumita.
Yes,
Himani, you're going to have to stop sharing so that Madhumita can share.
So I've stopped sharing the screen.
Yes, yes. We're just waiting for Madhumita to share her screen. She has the PPT. Unless we've lost her, and then we might want to move on to Suraj. Suraj, you be ready? Okay, I guess I'm going to take that call. Suraj, would you be able to? Yeah, you can share as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
I think, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Good evening, all. My name is Suraj Nambudri. I am from MICA, and I'll be presenting an upcoming book chapter. So it deals with what is happening in our lives right now with Zoom and online classes. But I'd like to talk more about student engagement and students at the heart of it. Okay, so as we all know, COVID was declared a pandemic in March 2020, and a lot of things have been documented on the business and economy side of it. But comparatively education sector by large have been neglected, because although we talk a lot about how we have adopted to online learning, teaching, innovative methodologies, but ideally we are just trying to do something, not to break that chain of continuity of educating students. So as we can see, around 990 million students were out of schools across 130 countries, and this has been documented by UNESCO, WHO. And one important thing is the closure of educational institution, what it carries for students. It's not just a place for being there, you learn, take a degree, get out it, but it's a place where students feel equal, and it's a part of their journey where they evolve and when they're ready to move on to the world. And as we all know, a lot of positive things have been spoken about how technology has revolutionized education system, coming of edtech platforms and so on. But we have not addressed the issues of digital divide, social exclusion, access divide. What about the marginal people at the margins of the society? We're not talking about that. So I'd like to, this is more about a lot of ideas that I'd like to share. I'm sorry. So sorry for that.
We can see your
Sorry,
screen now, Suraj. Yeah.
Yeah, I am unable to, just 1 second. There is some technical glitch, I think. I'm really sorry, but yeah, just 1 second. Yeah, so as we, sorry for that delay. So critical thing about engagement, what are the challenges faced by all students across the globe? And the list goes on and on and on. And few things that I've mentioned is people with students with limited data plans, switching across devices. I think we all know the struggle of switching from mobiles to laptops to using a hotspot and the challenges that go on. The lack of motivation, distractions, and for instructors, the ability to adopt to these new technologies that might be foreign, being digital or we say virtual presence in the class is challenging for students as well as instructors. And the last thing, as we all know about Zoom fatigue and the Zoom gloom that we all, after meeting from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., taking classes, doing administration work. And this is all same for students and the faculty. At the end of the day, you're so tired, even though you're not on campus, you're virtually connected all the time. And we have to talk about the negative things that comes across, which, this narrative of digital everything, so as we say. So an important aspect for students is the socio-economic and the mental health issues. So as institutes go forward, we are simply looking at the business aspect of it and want to maximize, keep the business going on, but also forget that students are one of the key stakeholders. So these are a lot of challenges. And if you go to the literature, what is student engagement? It is ideally, it consists of three dimensions such as cognitive, affective, and behavioral. So one needs to be mentally engaged with the content that is being presented. Behaviorally, actively involved or responds to the task presented during the sessions or class. And obviously, the last is emotionally involved. And a lot of that also depends on the instructor. Somehow managing to create a rapport with students. Obviously, that's quite challenging to both of them because although entire digital bandwagon has been there with EdTech, but pandemic has really forced everybody to just jump on it and try to make things work. And one of the major points that we forget is about the socio-cultural context of the students, the teachers, the learners, the institution, and most importantly, the support staff. because we don't have a non-Western point of view. We are simply talking about and adapting to what is happening in the Western countries and context and trying to imitate that. So it has its own set of challenges. And one of the another important aspect is about infrastructure and resources. Whenever we are talking about digital divide, digital access, or we view things in positive light, but we are not talking about a lot of challenges that we face. For example, we've seen across news in small villages, kids going to school, having no access to actually laptops. And there have been multiple incidents in South India where children have, committed suicide because of unable to attend classes, the guilt and, all that comes with not able to keep up due to the financial, restrictions. So what I wanted to do is, this is like conversation about what is happening, and to, as the panelists beautifully summed up the positives and the negatives, the challenges and the different perspectives emerging. And that is what I wanted to share. It's like a platform to discuss. Although we are talking a lot about positives about it, we also need to talk about who are the major stakeholders. So this is a framework that we presented based on the Borup's ACE framework, that is adolescence community engagement framework, that is grounded in the learning environment of students. So as we can see, one of the points that we always forget is we either talk about the instructor or the student. We have to talk about the role of the institution, the infrastructure supported, provided by them, and obviously the role of IT. This has been heightened with the last 1.5 years. So these are all, we cannot study things in isolation. So my attempt was to bring together, synthesize literature and the current things happening around the world, and bring in something that, as we say, a description is a very good precursor to prediction and so on. So my attempt to synthesize and bring towards various perspectives to have a holistic view about what is happening. So when we roll up educational institution is providing infrastructure, having the kind of content that has been created for students, the level of engagement, the training, and in most of the institutions, the faculties are quite seniors. We need to take into account their expertise, training them about what is happening. It is difficult for everybody to, make this transition. The narrative of the new normal is something I stay away from, because it's questionable. Because what is new normal is what we need to talk about. And given academia, we also have the productivity narratives. So there are a lot of challenges being presented. And if we keep students at the heart, we need the coalescing of all the three stakeholders, that peers, the role of peers, the role of instructors and education institute. Only if these three come together can we actually be here for the only reason we are here to educate, to make them better students, learner, when they prepare them to, when they go off in the world. So this is the kind of framework that I basically wanted to talk about, how it is crucial to bring all these three perspectives together. Because even in literature, we are often talking about in isolation and too contextual. I agree contextual is there, but we have to take a one level abstract view of things to go forward. And I hope, adding this to the existing discussion in literature. And let's quickly talk about what is the residual legacy of the pandemic. Absolutely. Are things going to be all good and fancy and all good? You never know. Are institutions adopting hybrid or remote learning or even virtual tours of the campus? It is an opportunity for all of us to reevaluate, rethink what is happening, but we'll have to take it with a critical lens. Let's not forget the critical lens. And and one of the major things fueling this is the tech platforms. As we all know, it's all over the place. So institutions are collaborating with these platforms to invent a new course, to get more, business going, get the financial revenue in. But makes us question, what is the student's takeaway? Unlike all presentation, I don't have a conclusion. I have so many questions going forward, because I'm still figuring out what is it happening. For example, how successful are we in addressing the access divide, the digital divide. And we're not talking about anything contextual, emerging markets like a country. Second, we are talking a lot about, as the panelists also discussed, the future of edtech, gig economy, our future faculty, contractual workers. Is education a commodity? An interesting thing. We don't want to be that, but that's an interesting view going forward. And third, and the most important thing that I feel, what can universities and institutions do to make online learning more than just a chunk of recorded information, put it out there for consumption? And it's like a streaming education technology. Can we, is that helpful for students? Will that be engaging? How would be the learning outcomes? I think it's too many questions, and I hope going forward, we take this critical lens to reflect on what has been happening. That is quite important. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Suraj. I'm sorry, I'm the Grim Reaper of presentation. So, Madhumita, is it good for you to share now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you're going to have to stop sharing, Suraj.
Oh, yes.
Yay, success.
Is it visible?
Yes, it is. Please go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so this is a research on social media engagement. So the title is Social Media Engagement in the New Normal, an exploratory study on Facebook users. So why I have chosen this research? What is the background of that kind of research topic, what I have undergone, is in India, the country's digital population is approximately 6 to 4 million, and they all are active users. And the Facebook is the leading social media in our country, and as well as in the world. Indian users are the highest according to the data, latest data. And my topic is specifically with special reference to the female Facebook users. Why? Because the percentage of female Facebook users are lower than that of the male users. So what is the introduction of that? What is the overview? So first of all, Katz and Folkers in 1962 told that media consumption is followed by difficult social situation, and that situation draws awareness of problems. So as we all know that we are facing some problem in the new normal kind of things, the COVID, that is a pandemic, and we all are aware of that. We have faced lots of problem in social, psychological, educational, every kind of arenas. And for that, we all need such kind of media and such kind of information or other kind of needs. So that kind of specific problems leads to the gratification and needs. So as we all use social media, so social media engagement pattern has taken, am I audible?
Yes, yes, we can hear you,
Okay,
Madhumita.
okay, thank you. As we all know that social media engagement pattern has taken a new form, because as we all are facing now a social distance, we all have faced, and we have to talk, we have to reach to people with some mediated communication. We need some mediated communication. So there are people who have used a vast method of social media engagement. It might be Facebook, might be YouTube, and different kinds of WhatsApp. It might be, because as for the latest data by India today, WhatsApp is the leading social media platform in India during the pandemic. So Facebook engagement. So I have chosen Facebook engagement. Why? Because Facebook is providing us different kind of media under one umbrella. Media content, sorry, under one umbrella. We have pages by different TV channels, pages of newspapers, pages of bloggers. We have pages of entertainment channels. We can see videos, we can see everything, and we can read news too. But the activity on Facebook varies from entertainment to awareness creation And maybe in educational purpose also we can use Facebook, because as far the universities are doing, they are posting their programs, live programs and everything. We can see that Facebook is a multimodal platform right now. So from that, I have found the research problem is that how have women become involved in one particular type of social media, that is Facebook, and what gratification do they receive from it during the time of COVID-19? In the pandemic situation, when the face-to-face communication is literally closed, women have used mediated communication in various ways. But how far the social media provides satisfaction to the female users? So as the literature review suggested that the social media audiences, so in this research, the main theme is that social media audiences are active, and they were active during the new normal time. As Marshall McLuhan has written in Audience Analysis in his book, Facebook users are within a group or public as micro audience that consume particular type of media. And so sometimes choosing a specific media in fulfilling the need of one person goes difficult. So when I am watching television, maybe I cannot choose that what kind of things I want to see, I want to watch. I could be confused. So if I am scrolling down the news feed in social media, I can see videos, I can see news and every kind of thing under one umbrella. So this is the facility provided by the Facebook. I think the repository of the social media research gives us the classification of social media contents, but the themes are somehow different in every branch of audience analysis. So social media usage gratification is coming from the contents. There are multiple numbers of gratification in respect of individual characteristics of Facebook users, and multiple gratifications are found by different scholars in different countries, different social phenomena, different audiences. So different classification, different stratas are there, and there are scholars who have found social and psychological motivation under that, and social and psychological motivation. So there are wide array of social psychological motivation as suggested by the scholar. So from the literature review, these are the conclusions I have found, and the gap is in the gratification sought from the social media, and especially Facebook is specifically on marketing communication. There are very few, hardly to be found a paper on social phenomena or anything that is related to a specific audience engagement kind of. There are diverse motivation work behind different kind of social media, so it is really hard to find the motivation worked for a large number of audiences. Social media engagement of Indian during the new normal should be covered, because people have used social media so far. So what is the theoretical framework work? As the social media users are called to be the active users, so uses and gratification theory is a suitable approach for the study. And what uses and gratification theory told is media users actively seeks media contents or platform in order to gratify specific needs, and uses and gratification approach explores how and based on which motives recipients use the media, as well as which gratifications are obtained. So Katz, Gravich and Haas 1973, in their studies, they have formed some stratas on the basis of empirical study, and they have formed 5 themes on uses and gratification approach. And later on, Katz, Bloomer and Gravich have done the same study, same kind of thing, and they have also added to the same knowledge book. So from that, I have the key aim of the study is to understand the usage of Facebook during the COVID-19 outbreak. From that, I have formed 2 objectives: to explore the usage of Facebook during the pandemic and the ramification based on it, and to analyze the major trends of gratification and disparities in intra and inter gratification shot from Facebook. So what is the method followed here? It is a totally qualitative approach I have done with, and the universe is female Facebook users, the sample size 9 women, and the sampling method is purposive sampling. The purpose is to choose specific females who were using Facebook before the time of pandemic and during the time of pandemic too. And I have done in-depth interview of those females with online calling, and the data collection period is August and September 2021. And the analysis method is constant comparative analysis. So this is the details of the interviewee, 9 interviewee, on the basis of their educational status and occupational status. Because why I have chosen different kind of population, because as for the users and gratification approaches so far told that there are different social and psychological motivation behind different kind of Facebook users. So I wanted to understand what are the socio-psychological motivation they have created during the pandemic, and is there any difference between the motivations and with the usage of the Facebook. So what the finding from the objective one suggested that the 3 things are coming from the findings: cognitive engagement, social interaction, and escapism. And another theme is effective engagement that came from the literature review, but I did not find any effective engagement theme from my study. But all these 3 is connected to crisis need gratification related to new normal time. Because in the previous studies, I have seen different cognitive engagements are different, social interaction, escapism, their motivations are different, and the objective for escapism and the social strata, psychological motivation, everything is different. But in this study, what I have found, they all are coming from different social strata, different psychological inbuilt belief, but all they are doing, they are working in a same manner. They are Yes.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Could you please conclude with one key takeaway?
Okay. So what is the conclusion coming from the study is, sorry ma'am, I'm going to the previous slide. So what is coming from the study is the interdisparities have been there because of the social status of the woman in terms of the education, employment status, and age. And intra-disparities in cognitive engagement only have been observed in terms of the information type and source focus and fact-checking motivation. So what is the conclusion coming from the study is there is a relationship between gratification sought and received from the social media. If gratification sought is not achieved, the recipient may stop using a particular media or consuming a particular media content. In case of COVID-19 situation, the women who tried to get the crisis gratification have got the related information and news, escapism, and social interaction from social media. And the additive component into the knowledge book of media gratification is the crisis gratification. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhumita. And I'm going to hand over to Sandeep sir for the discussion. Could you stop sharing? Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you, Davina, for handing it over to me. And I just want to thank all the presenters. I think some very good research and potential for a lot of really good research. I'll have some general thoughts, maybe some questions for each. And, we can probably, hopefully, as I said, open it up for a broader conversation. I do want to begin with thanking both Usha and Nimi, who gave some very good initial feedback on those abstracts, which I read. And I think what we're seeing today is a result of that initial feedback, which, mostly was like really helping along that initial abstract to proceed to some good research that we saw today. So I'll just proceed briefly. I'll try to not take too much time. So Farhat first, I thought, of course, very interesting research, very topical, very specific to what's going on in India, and almost in some ways kind of understudied, because those kind of spaces within urban communities that exist outside of our purview are not often studied as closely. And so I think this idea of looking at the Jankars and how exactly they're playing this role, I think is very, very interesting. The challenges that you present are, of course, I mean, majority of the presentation today was about the various challenges that are being faced. And I think that is a great contribution that your study does. I'm also wondering this emphasis on digital first, right? And digital only almost, right? And almost circumventing any human social, infrastructures and networks that existed. It presents challenges. What is the longer term thinking here? I'm thinking of, notion of leapfrogging, like you hear of communities and countries that, bypass landline phone connections to go to cell phones, right? And so there's almost like a technical circumvention that is often presented in a celebratory way that, hey, like, look at these countries that never, they didn't go through this kind of transition period, and look, they're almost kind of doing better. And oftentimes, the digital India gets talked about in that sense, that like we're skipping step 2 and 3 and going to step 4 and 5. But the pain involved in moving from, to step 4 and 5 is, I think, what your presentation brought out really well. I think in terms of some real potential here for theoretical work, your abstract talked about cyber cafes. I didn't see that as much in the presentation today. I just feel like that is one of those very uniquely cultural hubs, present and operational in India, that first of all doesn't exist, not at least in my experience of, the West, but the role they play, and I feel like the Jankars are kind of, emerging in that space, right? But the role they play as these hubs of ambition, of desire, of social kind of mingling, of, almost like all kinds of mingling of boundaries of privacy as well, right? I mean, these cyber cafe owners know everything about you. They are matchmakers. They are like, helping you apply for jobs and education, degrees and all that. So I'm wondering if some of that, phenomenon you see, because I'm just trying to think what is the kind of theoretical intervention and potential contribution that your study could make, right? So not just to repeat, what has been done elsewhere, but what is the study based in Trilokpuri? What does it do? How does the digital and the human kind of hybrid scenario present itself to give us some new ways of thinking about, these almost hubs of new kinds of sociality, right? So anyway, I'm not sure, probably I'll go through all the presenters and then you can answer if that's okay. So yeah, I think some great, potential here, Farhat. Thank you for sharing this. Himani, again, a fascinating study. Just in terms of thinking of micro-credentials as a thing that it seems has, it always existed, but has taken on a new kind of urgency and a new kind of momentum in the COVID era. So I'll kind of look at it in a slightly dialectical way, which is, to think of it both in terms of some of the things you said, which is, the positives, right? They present a challenge to the status quo. They present a much needed competition to the entrenched hierarchies of education systems in India, which, unless this challenge emerges, are very happy continuing to do what they do without innovating, without, thinking of what is the end goal, what do students want, are we meeting those needs, right? So I think some of that, I mean, I don't want to be entirely critical, right? Like you cannot, I mean, it's good to have this dialectical view. And I think in the case of India, that is very much a needed, change, some kind of a shakeup, which has been happening for a while, but this I think presents, as one of those. But just to bring in the critical perspective here as well, right? What is being lost? What is the risk of continuing to go down this bandwagon? Can these micro-credentials eventually replace, 3-year college or 2-year, MA degrees, right? Like the classroom space, the longer duration of learning, the year-long immersion in an idea, which is not professionally oriented, right? Like knowledge for knowledge's sake, right? The phrase that we often kind of, repeat in a liberal arts setting in a college such as the one that I teach. I ended up thinking of a quote from Deleuze in a very short 5-page essay in Postscripts on the Societies of Control. I'm going to read that just because it's so relevant here. So here he goes. Indeed, just as the corporation replaces the factory, perpetual training tends to replace the school, and continuous control to replace the examination, which is the surest way of delivering the school over to the corporation. So this was written in 1992, and he's, kind of almost predicting what that new society of control, which he argues will look like, right? So constantly reinventing ourselves, right? Being self-entrepreneurs, seeking out these next opportunities. It is a brave new world. I'm wondering if it is the best way to go in terms of education, the way we educators think of it, right? So I think, I think that dialectical perspective of, the pros as well as the downsides, I think, is a great opportunity for this study. And I think the great work you've done already is headed in that direction. Very briefly on Suraj, yeah, once again, some very interesting, observations on what COVID is doing and the new kinds of possibilities that, teaching online has presented. So once again, I'll say that, the challenges faced are obviously very well brought out, all the things that you suggested, right? Like the world entered into this totally unprepared. The things that you called are the residual legacies of the pandemic. Some of the other ways in which it's being talked about, at least on campuses here, they're calling COVID keepers. So, what are the things that we did not know were possible, which were suddenly made visible to us, after having been in the, Zoom teaching mode, right? It's like through compulsion or coercion, we entered into this. But now, right, like for example, this conference, right? I could not imagine this happening in a pre-COVID era. Like we were just not used to this time zone switching, India, US, right? And coming together. And I've now attended quite a few of these, which is a great, kind of thing that it has opened up for us. So I think, the challenges are certainly there. And I think you presented the 3 corners: institutions, peer learning, and educators. Are those the 3 corners that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering also, once again, to bring in the culturally rootedness, which I think has been a suggestion made in all studies, right? I'm wondering if, in the case of India, the entrenched cultures of education is also a strong 4th pillar. Like it's not an abstract study being done anywhere else, but, these experiments with technology are happening in a very specific cultural location, which, has to kind of work against some of those barriers while also innovating, in some new ways. So I'm wondering if that is something that, your study is thinking about. And lastly, Madhumita, once again, fascinating study, has progressed quite a bit from the abstract that I saw. So I just want to congratulate you on that. I think there's a lot of potential here, especially the gender, dimensions. The use of uses and gratifications is a great idea. A couple of quick thoughts I'll have is that, how do we think of the uses and gratifications for the digital era? Some new scholarship is looking at that. The theory obviously came to us in an era when Facebook and other digital platforms did not exist. So now that we have these, how can we kind of rethink these? To your questions, I thought some great potential in those interviews. The one thing that you are talking about without using the phrase is, when you say why Facebook, right? Why not Twitter? Why not Instagram? Why not, I don't know, other Snapchat or any other social media platforms that exist, right? Why Facebook? I think the answer to that lies in the affordances of the platform. And so that phrase, I didn't see it, but I think there's a lot of scholarship on affordances. What does Facebook allow and what does it not allow, right? Like all platforms have allowances and restraints, right? And since you cite McLuhan, I just thought thinking about the specific ways of the media, right? The design, what are the things that it allows me to do? Maybe it is the private network rather than a fully open ecosystem like Twitter. Maybe it is the ability to, kind of write longer, share the kinds of things, right? So I'm just wondering if just specific questions about why Facebook, may also kind of, allow that gender and culture to kind of intersect with, some scholarship about the platform to allow you to make some good content. So I'm just wondering if that is a question you thought about or you asked. So yeah, I think I'll stop here. Some great food for thought in all the presentations. I'm just curious, if you want to respond or, one by one, and then maybe we can open it up for other questions.
Should I go first? Then we can go, as well.
Sure, yeah.
So, thank you, Sangeet, for giving us a brief thing about my thing. And I'm really sorry because this time combined things like I skipped that cyber cafe thing. So basically, if we look at our project Jankar, we are basically trying to map the difference between human infrastructure and the digital infrastructure. For us, digital infrastructure is how common service points are working in a community like Tilokpuri, how mediators are working then, and then how things, how these things, cyber cafes are there. So for people going to office and be in a queue and then waiting for their forms to submit is exactly as going to a cyber cafe, because there they have to go, they have to give a certain amount, they have to pay them a certain amount, and then they have to wait for them. But suddenly when lockdown happened, so that digital infrastructure, which was not basically a infrastructure for them, which was just a platform for them to access certain social protection schemes, that collapsed. And then these mediators comes, and then our Jankars come into the main thing, and then they try to negotiate with people, they're trying to negotiate with state as well, because these people, they were trying to put pressure on our government to start some schemes which can cover, social protection schemes which can cover all people. But then to government applicable a scheme which only covers the people who have Aadhaar cards, which means they again exclude a certain amount of people who are not on Aadhaar card, and then Aadhaar card with a certain mobile linkage system. And then especially in a community where where there is lots of low, working classes living there, they are not that much techy, and then they can do certain things. And that moment of time in a place where, in a Tilukpuri, where everything was shut down because it was a first wave, it was extremely impossible, totally impossible for people to go and ask for help for anyone, because nobody is going to help them. There was so much fear of COVID that even people not allowing anyone to enter their house. And then these mediators, they come into flame, and then they try to mediate things. They use their smartphones. And see why mediation is, important. Why I'm always, because our paper is also like negotiating things in the hunger and the online mode, because they are not charging anything. These people are giving them free service. Even for a cyber cafe, if somebody is going, right now, even in Delhi, somebody is going to make their Aadhaar cards or for another thing, they have to pay at least 150 to 200 rupees for a one-time visit. And then they have to give their all documents. But these people, these mediators, these Jankars, they are people from their own community. They have their own stand. They know them personally. They can go them and then ask them at any time. And there they don't need to pay anything. So that's why, even though there are cyber cafes things, and then the way government is looking at cyber cafes, earlier there was cyber cafes, then they introduced common service centers, where they take a little bit of less amount as compared to cyber cafes, but procedure is same. And these places are also working as like, they are basically a point of corruption as well. They will ask you, okay, give me 2,000 rupees, I will make your Aadhaar card, even if you don't have any documents. Give me 1,500 rupees, I will make your voter ID card. So, and these mediators, they are the ones who have, because they believe them, they are the people from their own community. And then where state is blurred in a such manner that you cannot go and meet a state physically, because going to an office and meeting an office is like you are meeting a person from a state, where everything is so blurred and so on cloud. Then these mediators are the ray of hope for them. And for digital things, we need certain people who can mediate with community and a state, because the rapid amount of digitalization is happening in India, especially in Delhi. If we look at government is daily, they are making an apps for everything, like for COVID batch to even to Delhi tourism app to bus ticket apps, everything. And then they are thinking that one can easily access it. Nobody is talking about that who is going to give them per data monthly packages for them. They can't afford the 300 or 400 rupees data package, and they don't even know how to use it, because using an YouTube and a WhatsApp and then doing certain things for a state thing is totally different thing. You need a printer, you need a scanner, you need a certain setup. So that's the thing. I mean, cyber cafes are there, but they are still, I mean, a platform for people to access instead of a dependence thing. I mean, they can go and they work that, they still work as a broker instead of, I mean, platform to believe. I hope I will be able to make you understand.
No, thank you. That's very helpful. You know, the idea of the Jankars as being this totally volunteer service, that is a very interesting fact. Thank you. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll go next. Thank you so much for the comments and the feedback that we received right now. So I think that's very true where you mentioned that micro credentials are nothing new. They actually existed, but the current momentum has actually kind of empowered this phenomena and has kind of increased the rate for their acceptance, not just in the academia, but also in the industry. Because like while we were interviewing certain industry professionals, they were adamant on the fact that the individuals whom we'll be hiring now need to be skilled enough to prepare for the future. And when then questioned again what exactly they mean to prepare by the future, they were themselves not very sure, but definitely mentioned that skills need to be upgraded. They need to learn new things. And when we come to the second context of the study, which I think very rightly is given as a feedback, that it's not just about the happy things. So definitely there is one side of the story which tells that the adoption is important and there are potential benefits of that adoption and the role of micro credentials in higher education. There's another side of the story where time and again the responses, the inputs shared by the participants have given an indication of the capitalist culture which exists. So they have talked about how capitalism is an outcome, is a part of the entire ethics system, and that they are right now not sure that how it is going to affect higher education, or they are just trying to keep it at the back foot and trying to promote more strategic partnerships and present their potentials. But definitely there are a lot of questions when it comes to how they are going to cater to a particular segment in the society, to maybe a marginal segment of the society, how they are going to talk about the whole value game. So again, micro credentials will create a value game in the society. So like how value of education will be evaluated just by these credentials or the knowledge and skills and merit of an individual. So these are some of the very critical questions which we are still exploring. We are trying, probably they will become a part of our future scope of the research, because currently the study limitedly talks about one aspect of it, but definitely doesn't ignore the other aspect of it, and would try to explore it that aspect as well. Yeah, thank you.
So may I go
Thank
next?
you. That's very helpful. Yeah.
So you mentioned the contextual factors that have been taken in account when thinking about student engagement or what I discussed. So because of the limitations of the chapter, so although it was an attempt to synthesize a lot of things from literature, what our interpretation of cultural aspect was on a little bit of abstract. For example, even on when we talk about entire adoption scenario across institutions, we have to make a important distinction about ownership, private institution versus government institutions, institutions that are located in the metro cities as compared to different villages. So there are, of course, differences when it comes to cultural element, but what I wanted to highlight is it's quite difficult, because when you're trying to balance the cultures and subcultures within India, there are different contrasting things you can see. For example, the leading institutions, IIT and IIMs, may have the infrastructure, the backup to conduct an entire online. And we've seen that professors and the faculties are in class, albeit taking virtual sessions. But when we go to the rural or primary education, that is where most challenging things are happening. You cannot force children to sit in in front of their screens as compared to the adult. And one last interesting thing I thought, like an anecdote, is about the spaces of education. What is interesting is in India, we might have a notion about what educational spaces means. So take an example of my own background. So I like to reconfigure the space to have some sense that I am in a library. So that may, is my way of trying to manage the level of engagement with the conversation happening. So there's a very interesting things going forward. I think I'm sure a lot of pointers, and thank you for all the valuable feedback.
Thank you, Suraj.
Yes. So thank you for all. Hello, am I audible? I have some issue with network. So okay. So thank you for all your comments. So first question was the theoretical perspective of usage and gratification. So the digital implementation of uses and gratification perspective, yes, what I observed that yes, that could be done, and in the digital perspective of digital gratification can be formed from different social medias or digital platforms. It might be usage of internet and gratification as an umbrella term. Under that, the social medias and other kinds of digital medias could come. So yes, that kind of study, I think it is a limitation of my study that I have chosen only a Facebook. But from that interviews, what I have observed that there are different kind of social media, digital medias. From that, people are getting different type of needs and gratification. So it could be implemented in future studies for the digital gratification. And yes, the theoretical perspective of uses and gratification in the digital communication. So now what we are doing is we are totally getting into the digital or virtual world. So it could be formed. And the next question is why Facebook potential for the gender perspective. Yes, the Facebook could be seen in the lens of through the lens of gender, because the women are the marginal section of internet users. If we are seeing the internet penetration of India in different states, the women are the marginal section. So how the marginal section is using any online platform, because they have some cultural barriers. When a female is using Facebook, a female can overcome that kind of sections, and they can interact with different people, different type of information they can sort in. Even I am from a rural area, I see people here, they have TVs, but a single TV in house, and the TV is owned by the male person of the family. So they will watch the television, they will watch the cricket, so they will choose what the things we have to see in the TV. So females are now jumping into the mobiles, and they are largely using YouTube's, Facebook's, different kind of platforms. So we can look in through the gender perspective. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
If I may intervene for a bit here, there was a question in the chat when Himani was presenting. It's from Dr. Nimi. She asked, can micro-credential approach to education challenge the entrenched hierarchy of educational spaces? And Dr. Raman also added to this as a comment. I also wonder if it further exacerbates the advantage of those with digital access and literacy. So Himani, would you like to comment on that?
Yes. So thank you so much for the question. I think what was just mentioned was partially true, because yes, it challenges a lot of things. And yes, one thing that has emerged from the data also so far is that this is a scenario where everybody talks about those who are actually privileged enough to have digital access. So like while we were also doing the rounds up for our studies, and when we counter questioned a lot of individuals who were there from the industry about how are they planning to address the gap, the digital divide, or the learning loss which exists, or the challenges of digital access which is faced by a particular sections in the society, they were unsure of it, and they clearly mentioned that we deal with individuals who have access to digital resources. We deal with individuals who know how to use these digital resources. Probably they have access to laptops, even phones, smartphones at their homes. They might even have two smartphones for particular reasons. So yes, that question still exists, that how this critical issue of digital divide, or of digital access for that matter, is going to be addressed. And these micro credentials may be seen as an alternative right now of the traditional higher education system, and they may be seen as someone posing challenge
to the traditional caricature of higher education, but they are definitely not a very perfectly shaped design of education right now. So yes, there are a lot of challenges there. I hope I've answered the question. If I've missed something, please let me know.
Thank you, Himani. Dr. Raman had also asked to Dr. Sangeet if you see any connections between what the presenters have presented and the points made in the earlier panel. If there was, if there were connections there that you saw.
Yeah, I think one running thread, and thank you, Dr. Raman, for that question. I mean, one running thread was the question of design, of including stakeholders in the process of design, right? And it is clear in Farhat's presentation that, you know, people are made to encounter an interface and then expected to make sense of it, right? Who teaches them what to make, what decisions to make, how to navigate those things, right? So if instead of, you know, them being presented with this, if they're involved in, you know, the design process, right? Like if there are some of those people from Trilokpuri actually sitting down when the interface designers are making this thing, right? I'm not sure if there are language barriers as well. That I thought was one running thread that very clearly many presenters in the previous panel discussed, and I think is a continuing, you know, hindrance in many of your work as well. I'm curious if there are others, but that's for sure one that I thought.
I'm thinking this is a good time for final thoughts regarding this section before we pass it on to Nimi ma'am for closing remarks.
Can I just say one thing, Devina? No, I just wanted to say something that, you know, struck me both in terms of Himani's presentation and, you know, what Suraj said, that we seem to spend, I mean, this whole issue of micro-credentialing, and I think in the chat, we were talking about corporate training as well, again, goes back to the fact that, you know, many of these, the kinds of courses and the kinds of skills that are highlighted in micro-credentialing assume the ability to apply those skills in context beyond the point of origin, which doesn't often happen. And I think, you know, with all this, and this is a larger critique of this whole, you know, skill development program, that it focuses on patchwork approach to education rather than strengthening basic education, which, and if you have those critical skills, you really don't need all these patchwork. So yeah, so sorry, that was just a larger comment. Yeah.
Yes. Is it time for the vote of thanks? Or any interesting questions? Any questions that anybody wants to ask? I mean, dying to ask? No? Okay. So I will do the vote of thanks. I just wanted to share one small thought that crossed my mind. During the course of the workshop, we're talking about how most of us have access only to vignettes, you know, experience the pandemic experience as a vignette, you know, we collect all of these as an archive and take a look at them when the issue of context came about. But I also realized that doing this work, we as academics, as people who read a lot, who write a lot, who generalize and abstract, we are in this position of privilege to take these vignettes and weave it into something more broader, more abstract, look at it from a distance, more objectively. I think I'm very thankful for that privilege. You know, I don't know whether I could use the word privilege, but I'm just saying, right? Because this workshop brings together that point of view, to look at something broadly, to bring all these varied experiences and maybe point to a trend, point to something that is kind of at the edge, but impending to take over. I don't know. When I look at the education models that we are discussing, I don't know what is going to happen to education. Probably we are in a position to imagine how that space is going to be recreated during and post-pandemic. So that is my takeaway from this workshop. And I have a lot of people to thank. Of course, the host Husha Raman for premeditating this workshop from the get-go, and it was really a lovely workshop. And also her wonderful bunch of associates. Devina, I think you can stop now and take a breath, okay? Shruti, Manisha, Chinar, Amulya, great back-end work. And speakers, wonderful speakers, Shilpa, Aditya, Naveen, Sangeet, Radha, Srinivas, Nupur. I think some of them have left the meeting, I think, but then maybe we can reach the thanks in other ways. And last but not the least, our young scholars and presenters, Farhat, Himani, Madhumita, Suraj. I think you brought in that the view from the ground, each of your research papers did point to the actual experiences of the pandemic, and also how do we imagine some of these spaces in a more broader sense. So with this, let me bring the roundtable to a close. I'm sorry if I missed out on someone. I'm sure I have thanked them in spirit. So bye-bye all of you. I think it's been wonderful. Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm just
So
going to stop
everybody's
recording
earned a
now.
good dinner.
Yeah.
Yes, please stop.
Or a good lunch.